Today we're continuing our series on the book of James, putting faith into practice. This is the theme of the book as James is explaining to us what a life of faith is going to look like. And as we go through this series, we're noticing some highlights from the book as we are seeking to learn how to live a life of faith. In this third lesson, we're going to be talking about fulfilling the royal law. What is the royal law? Well, James defined this as loving our neighbor as ourselves. We often call this the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. James talks about the importance of this in the passage we're going to be looking at here today. Let's look at James chapter 2, verses 8 through 10. If, however, you are fulfilling the royal law, according to the Scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing well. But if you show partiality, you are committing sin and are condemned by the law as transgressors. For whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles in one point, he has become guilty of all. Notice what James says here in these verses about fulfilling the royal law. First and foremost, this is about showing love to others. It is about looking out for their best interests, rather than looking out first for our own personal interest or sometimes our selfish interest. And this is about more than just recognizing in theory that we are to show love for others. This is about actually being mindful of others and the needs of others, and then actively doing good for them. The second point, and related to the first point, is that we are not to show partiality. In the verses leading up to this, in James chapter 2, James condemned these brethren for treating a rich man and a poor man differently when they came into their assemblies. He described them as having regard for the rich man and dishonoring the poor man, as if one was more valuable than the other one. But they were to not treat one another this way or treat others in this way, but this principle applies to more than just how we treat the rich and the poor. This affects every situation that we find ourselves and how we treat others. We are to treat others in love and do so without partiality. Then the third point that James makes here in these verses is that we need to recognize how God sees all of this. It may be tempting for us to think that it's a minor thing if we neglect sometimes to show love for others, or if we show partiality in our treatment of others or our dealings with them. Yet James made it clear that when we fall short in this way, we are committing sin. And if we are guilty of one sin, any sin, here is the sin of partiality, but he makes the point here, if we're guilty of one sin, we are guilty of all. So we are to take this seriously. We are to take sin seriously, including this sin of partiality. So let's strive to show love for others, to fulfill the royal law, to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. And James says here that if we will do this, then we are doing well.